We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Will he or won't he? Only his barber knows. President Biden facing record unpopularity in a nation beset by crises. And even members of his own party are poo-pooing the idea that Biden should face the voters once again in 2024. Now, I can think of no one better to help pass the facts than Liberty Nation's Joe Schaefer, so he joins us here today. Welcome back to the show, Joe.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, a prominent Washington newspaper, a long supporter of all things from the left, came out this week with what I thought was an interesting op-ed saying that the Democrats are inadvertently going to make Donald Trump the 47th president. Now, what's your take on their position on this, but also the fact that they're actually putting this on the front page of their digital site?
This is the Biden angst, and that's the larger theme that's going on here. And you've seen it in several other articles in the big box media, which is aligned, of course, with the Democratic establishment. What is most interesting to me is there have been these stories saying Democrats are disillusioned with Biden. They don't want him in 2024. And we're getting some names. AOC's, no surprise. Bernie Sanders, the progressives, that's no surprise. But a DNC, Democratic National Committee staffer, came out giving his name, saying, we can't pretend that things are all going wonderful here in America, because they're not. So that's significant to me when an establishment Democrat is willing to put his name out there criticizing the man who is, like it or not, the face of the Democratic establishment right now. So this is Biden Inc. They know that they've got, what's shaping up to be a loser on their hands right now and a disaster in the White House. The problem is, what are their alternatives? And it was just like in 2020 when they ended up with this guy. The alternatives aren't so great either. That's
exactly my next question. So as you point out, AOC, she came along and kind of debunked the idea that Biden would be getting any progressive support. And that makes me wonder how the radical progressive wing think they can do any better with another candidate, 'cause as you point out here. In 2020, Joe Biden was basically gifted the nomination because the other candidates were too radically left. And so what happened was everybody coalesced around Biden thinking, this way we're not going to scare off those voters who just happen to dislike Trump but don't want radical leftist policies. But he's governed as a radical leftist in many ways. The policies, the agenda, the language of the White House, more specifically. So with voters rejecting it in 2020, how do the progressives think they can really do better in 2024?
I'm not so sure Biden is the ruling as the leftist to the progressive satisfaction. He is a progressive ruling establishment figure. And the emphasis to me is more on establishment. The progressives who want real systemic change cannot be happy with Joe Biden. He is ultimately a swamp guy. So if you're the Democrats, you've heard this spiel before from the progressive left in 2016 and 2020. We're not going to put up with this anymore. We want real change. We don't want an establishment candidate. And what happened at the end? They dutifully got in line, supported Hillary in 2016 like faithful troops, got behind Biden, which was really biting the bullet in 2020. They did not want that guy, but they did. So if you're the Democratic establishment, how concerned are you that AOC and Bernie are giving this talk again? Not really. David Axelrod, who is a very key player in the DNC, the whole Democratic establishment, he's come out publicly already avidly supporting Biden, saying, we don't have better alternatives. The spin on him is bad because he looks old, but he's really doing a great job. Anyone who's being honest can look at that and say it's not true. But what is the signal that's coming out here from key players in the Democratic Party? Hey, we're not willing to let this guy go. It really comes down to the 2022 midterm elections, how much of a bloodbath, if it will be for Democrats. If things go better than their worst projections, Biden may actually be able to ride this out. If things go as bad as people are saying, he's going to be in real trouble. But the real trouble won't start until you see establishment-aligned Democrats really speaking out against this guy. And except for that one DNC staffer, we really haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, actually, that brings me on to a point about messaging. So at the moment, recently news broke that Keisha Lance Bottoms, who was a one-term mayor and also a potential VP pick for Biden, she's going to be taking over essentially what's a messaging job for the administration, which is really trying to sell the voters that Joe Biden is doing something right, and that seems to be her sole role in the swamp. Now, you mentioned here that Joe Biden, he's looking frail, and a lot of voters are seeing that. But you have the White House press secretary, Jean-Pierre, saying that this isn't even a question we should be asking. What's your take?
Keisha Lance Bottoms, she was very tied into the George Soros form of radical progressivism, which again is also tied into the establishment. So this is kind of trying to keep both sides happy here. There is an uneasy alliance going on with that. Keisha Lance Bottoms has some very radical roots, but you see this every now and then where they try to align with each other. Nancy Pelosi came out avidly endorsing Karen Bass for LA mayor, and she is as radical as it gets in Congress. So that was an attempt, and it didn't really work because they're not natural allies. If you look at what the progressives are as to what the America First faction of the Republican Party is, you see these American First, it's almost an insurgency within the GOP. They are not putting up with the rhinos. Adam Kinzinger, Lynn Cheney, they want them out, Liz Cheney. But the progressives go along with it. The progressives keep swallowing the Democratic equivalent of a Cheney and a Kinzinger. And how long can the establishment keep relying on that? How long will progressives be satisfied with really the Democratic Party is becoming the party of the swamp uniparty establishment? As the Republican Party goes more and more America First, you're seeing Bill Kristol types, you're seeing the DC think tank types openly aligning with the Democratic Party. And this is supposedly everything the progressives can't stand, even a very pro-war foreign policy. I know that the Ukraine war is popular in Democratic ranks, but progressives are supposed to be against the military-industrial complex. How much of this are they going to keep swallowing? They've been swallowing it for a long time, since Hillary Clinton in 2016. I think that this faction can break up, and this will be the big story of the 2022 midterm elections. If it is a total fiasco for Democrats, you're going to see progressives angry and not willing to go along with what the DNC is telling them they have to go along with.
Yeah, Joe Biden warned American voters that the Republican Party today is not the Republican Party of your grandfathers. And I think the same could be said for the Democratic Party of today. It's not the Democratic Party of your grandfathers, grandmothers, and all those in between. Joe Schaefer, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Coming up after this short break, we're back with Scott D. Cosenza to talk red flag laws. Now, don't go anywhere. It's going to be quite the show. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.